Happy Wine Wednesday, everyone. I am currently sipping on some Chardonnay. Hope you've got some wine in your hand too. Hope you've had a great week. Hope your seahorse tanks and reef tanks are doing fantastic. If you're on Instagram, we're still trying to deal with this seeing our faces thing. Let me know if you can still hear everything properly. And don't forget, you can jump on over to YouTube, search Seahorse Whisperer, and see the full video as we talk. But you can always listen on Instagram. We're on Facebook too. Final thing at the top, as if I'm a reporter here, don't forget, we're getting really close to 3,000 subs on YouTube. And when we hit that, we're going to I'll announce more about it soon, but we're going to do a contest. So even if you're on Instagram or Facebook, remember to go over to YouTube and subscribe to the Seahorse Whisperer channel so you'll be included in that giveaway. All right, that's all I really had. Lots to chat about. Oh, last thing. Sorry, forgot one more thing. Next week, this lucky gal and her family will be in Florida, and I will be visiting Seahorse Source. So I'm trying to talk him into doing Wine Wednesday live, where he'd be sitting next to me. And if we can't pull that off, I'm at least going to collect questions to ask him and do a video. So watch for the post called Ask Dan or Ask Seahorse Source. I'm going to be putting it up either tonight or tomorrow, and I will collect any questions from that, or you can always, of course, message me too. All right, that's my big spiel at the top. Everybody, well, happy Wine Wednesday. Okay, Holly, I know, Cheryl, we want to talk about the spiny seahorse in a sec, but Holly, you said you had some news, didn't you?
I do. Thing 2 is recovering. And I thought I was going to lose him. There were a few times where I considered actually putting him to sleep with the clove oil, and he's doing much better. His pouch has deflated, and he's feeling better. He's eating, and I can see him healing. He had some pretty bad bacterial infections going on, but it looks like he's probably going to make it now. So, very happy about that.
See, and that just goes to show you, I mean, you just never know. I mean, that I've had weird stuff like that too, where, I thought everything was a goner, and then, the seahorse is better. Hey, wait, really quick, Salty
In
Reef, thank you so
55
much for this. Sorry, we talked over each other. Salty Reef, I just want to say thank you so much for this super chat. Sorry you can't stay, but we love you too, and we'll get at you next week. But thank you. That's another thing, guys. You can always super chat if you're enjoying, or if you're enjoying I'm talking too fast. Enjoying the episode, or if you have gotten information that's helpful to you, you can always super chat to support the channel. Okay, sorry, Holly, go ahead.
That's okay. So he's been in the hospital 55 days as of today. And
nuts.
It was only a couple days ago his pouch finally deflated all the way. I did a complete water change for his tank. So I picked him up to put him in a bucket. And when I was doing that, I put just a little gentle pressure on the very base of his pouch where it was still a little bit swollen. And then when I put him in the bucket, I noticed he went and hitched like a normal seahorse and had no more air. He had a little tiny nodule at the base of his pouch for a couple of days after that, but that's gone now. And he just has the white flesh where he's healing from the bacterial infections.
Mm-hmm.
But yesterday he chowed down on his frozen mysis, and then he went into a food coma. He laid on the floor for a while, and he didn't want to eat much today, but he still ate like a few pieces. He just didn't pig out like he did yesterday. So I think he's on the mend. I think he'll probably be all right. I just need to give it more time.
How are his tail bubbles?
The tail bubble, what happened with that was, I mean, you had seen how huge it was.
Yeah.
It finally burst. And at that point, his tail.
That's when he had the hole in the tail.
So bad, it was almost in half. I mean, a big hole in his tail, almost half his tail. And it's healing. It's getting, smaller and smaller, starting to turn into normal flesh, the whole sealing up. I can see now along the side of his pouch, the side of his body, there's a white patch. I can see now from the bacterial infection. So I don't, he might have had some pouch emphysema, but I think most of the air, it was in him, in his flesh.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So that's why I couldn't get it out. And I just kept him on the antibiotics this whole time. And there were some times he looked so bad. I felt so bad for him.
Mm.
But like, I'm just going to keep treating him and just see how
Yep.
it goes.
Yeah.
And he kept himself
He
from
made it
floating.
this
He
far.
figured out how to lodge himself into a plant.
Mhm.
He had a plastic plant in there, and he could swim, but he was swimming upside down because he
Yep.
was all floaty and bent. He looked horrible, but he would swim around a little bit, and I was feeding him. He was having a hard time with the frozen mysis. So I was giving him adult brine shrimp that I had enriched,
Mhm.
and he would chase them around now and then, or they would swim by him and he could catch one. So he was sustaining himself on those for a little while, and he'd lodge himself in that plant so he wouldn't float away. And then
Mhm.
finally his pouch started deflating, and that was when I'm like, well, maybe I'll just wait and see and just keep
Mhm.
feeding him. And if he's trying to eat and he's trying to live, I'll just wait it out, because if he's not going to make it, he's not going to make it.
Right. And if he's trying, you're gonna try. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just
Okay.
kept
So
going.
real quick, for anybody who didn't catch the show last week or the week before, at the times that we talked about this, so tell what really, like, briefly, not, you don't have to explain the whole thing, but just say what happened and how, what you were doing to treat, like, for anybody who's not watched.
Okay. Well, in a nutshell, this was a seahorse that I had sold. He was offspring, of some of mine, and I had sold some of that batch. And he ended up in a roundabout way coming back to me because the owner that he'd been passed along to down the way couldn't take care of him and had already lost the other seahorse. He was all alone. So he came back to me with an infection, and I stuck him in the hospital. I originally was treating him. He had a tail bubble to start with. So external gas bubble disease, and I suspected internal as well, which sure enough, he started developing that. But I treated him originally with Diamox and Furan 2. Left him on the Furan 2 for 14 days. At that point, the Furan 2 ran out. He was still floaty, so I gave him another round of Diamox and then started him on Canaplex and Sulfaplex. And he's been on those two ever since day 15, I guess. And it's been 55 days now that he's been in treatment.
Gotcha. Absolutely. Well, I'm just so
But-
happy. And the Seahorse Corner said, been rooting for thing too. I'll show that on the screen too.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Cheryl.
I'm just saying that's an amazing job of working with a seahorse.
Yes.
I mean, most people would have given up a long time ago, first of all. And the fact that he's still even going at all boggles my mind. But it just shows how tough and determined they can be.
Yeah, I mean, they really surprise me sometimes with how resilient they are. And I mean, in his case, I mean, I've been treating him so long, and there's been times along the way when he looked so bad. I felt so bad for him. And then at the same time, I'm thinking, I'm using all these meds. I'm using a lot of salt. It's a lot of labor taking care of him. I'm like, I will have, if I waste all this money on medicine and salt and time and labor of taking care of him. But then when I started seeing him getting better the other day,
Yeah.
all of a sudden it made it all worth it. And then it put things like in perspective for me for the future, because I wouldn't have thought, honestly, of treating him that long. I had thought, I've heard like if they don't respond within 5 days of Diamox, they probably won't, but I'm glad I just hung in there and wrote it out.
Right, exactly. And it's not the same for every seahorse, obviously. And there is,
No.
Cheryl, there is a risk of not renal failure. What am I thinking? Of something happening to the liver if they get too much medicine, right?
Mhm.
Is that correct, Cheryl?
I think
Now,
it is.
Like if they're in, like Holly was weighing her choices, like, let's see, I don't want to give up on him. But being in medicine so long, doesn't that cause liver problems? Obviously thing 2 is getting better, thank Lord. But I'm just saying there's a risk of problems with the liver if there's too much medicine. Is that right or wrong?
that's potentially a problem. The thing is, I do know people that have used antibiotics long term. A friend of mine in France rescued a seahorse, and it had a huge chunk out of its back just below the dorsal spine. It looked like something very large just grabbed him.
Mm.
And I don't remember now, it was several months, and he was about ready to give up a couple times. And he ultimately, I keep messing with my screen.
Kidneys.
But anyway, yeah. And
Sorry.
I actually was putting his photos under a microscope and looking at him, because you could actually see where week after week the lesion was slowly getting smaller and smaller, and you could see the necrotic tissue disappearing.
Mm.
And I kept telling him, Patrick, the seahorse is improving. And at first he didn't believe me. And then he started looking at the pictures, because I started sending him the pictures that I was blowing up and enhancing. And he's like, it really is getting smaller. And seahorse finally healed completely, but it took months.
I was going to say, I've told this story before, but I had a seahorse that kind of was going down the same path that thing 2 was. And I wasn't as, sure as Holly wasn't sure, but I was at the point of giving up myself. And I ended up putting him in a tank of just fresh salt water, and he got better. I was like, what the hell? I have gone through all this treatment, all this stuff, and apparently his own dang immune system in just good fresh salt water worked. It was insane. Ray, have you ever had that experience before we go on to fish ID?
Well, I kind of suspect if you'd have done just the fresh water at the start, it may have done something, but it may have been a combination that the meds got things moving, and it was a coincidental thing and a help as well, putting them into that fresh salt water afterwards.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
But I have had improvement from putting them in fresh salt water right from the start. But I've also had a lot more that didn't.
Right. Every situation is different. I'm just so happy that thing 2 is doing well. And the Seahorse Corner said kidneys, I think, is what is affected by too much antibiotics. So, but we're just happy thing 2 is doing better, period. So good job, Holly. Bravo. Big clap for you and for thing 2. And then, just keep us updated. And how much is he back in the main tank, or are you giving him a little more time?
No, because I want him to heal up more.
Yep.
And eating, because he still has the white, where his tail got eaten away, and white on his side where his pouch is. So I don't think he's ready to go home yet. I'm hoping by Christmas, maybe. How do you tell? He's still, as long as he has the whiteness, he still has infection, right? What do you guys
It could
think?
be necrotic tissue from the bacterial infection.
Mm-hmm.
It's the thing.
I've heard. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Cheryl.
Well, the thing is, with the amount of problems that he's had and the amount of damage that the bacteria has done to him, he's going to take quite a while to get back to normal.
Mm-hmm.
And the white that you're seeing, I'm pretty sure, is probably dead tissue on the surface, but there's got to be live tissue underneath, or he still wouldn't be with us.
Well, and I would say my personal opinion, and I'm not the expert that Cheryl is, but Holly, I would say you know your seahorse. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I just we give great advice here, and I love that we have experts helping us through these things. But there's just times when I know what my seahorse. I know if he's back to normal or not. It's not like some flashing sign. It's just, oh, he's acting like himself again. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I think you're whatever you're doing is probably right. So I was just asking. I think you're probably smart to give him a while longer. But
did I stop giving him medicine maybe and just let him heal in the fresh salt water, or what? I mean,
what do you guys think? Right? Like, so
what's your opinions?
He's been in medication for quite a while, but now he's actually doing a really good job of improving. So do you continue the medication, or should she stop?
I don't think needs the Diamox anymore, but as that the healing area is still white, I worry about as it's healing there. I worry about bacteria reversing the healing process.
Yeah.
So I guess if it was my own, I'd probably push it a bit longer on the antibiotics just to make sure I can definitely tell that it is healing.
That's what I'm thinking, because I had, my other seahorse that was in there with a bacterial infection. He went home and is fine now. But by the time he went home, he didn't have the white patch stuff going on anymore. He was looking better. And I just think too, I don't think he's totally healed yet. I mean, I can't see what's going on inside him,
Yep.
Either.
And there's a big fear. There's a big fear too of creating resistant superbugs, when you stop medication too soon. I know you've been doing it for a long time, but
not too soon for him.
Well, no, it might. No, what I'm saying is it might be, because you don't know what all was wrong with him. It could have been multiple things, and some have healed up and some are still going. I agree with what Ray said. And just a disclaimer here, folks. If you come and bring your exact situation to the channel and ask questions, we will absolutely try to help you, but we are not vets. We are not doctors. We have some very experienced people here, but anything said on this channel is just what we would do. Thank you to whoever just subscribed. So just keep that in mind. Disclaimer, we're not telling you to do anything unless you ask us, and then it's all advice. It's not direction. All right, just had to get that out.
The biggest problem with bacterial resistance is when somebody uses an antibiotic improperly for too short of a term.
Right.
And this gives you a bacteria time to basically develop immunity to that particular antibiotic.
Because it doesn't actually kill them, and so then they can deal with it, right?
They go on and reproduce and actually have a bacterial resistance.
Yep. Okay,
well, the thing that I have done in the past, not very often, but when I've been wondering about is it actually improving, if I have the impression that it might be, but I'm not sure, I've taken a Q-tip and rubbed it over the white to see if anything comes off.
Oh.
If nothing comes off at all with a light rubbing, then I assume that it is definitely on the mend, and within a few days, then I usually put it back. Because usually if it's not really healing yet, there will be some transference onto the Q-tip, or you'll see something come off into the water.
Very good point.
You can also do photographic capture, recapture, take a pic of it tomorrow, and every couple of days, try to get the seahorse in exactly the same position and take another pic. And that's how I came to the realization and told Patrick that his seahorse was actually improving. Because initially, you couldn't really see it, but when you got it under a blown up picture with a macro lens, you could actually see where the fringes were smoothing out, the color was returning, but it was such a slow
Slow
process. It was
Yeah.
really hard to detect otherwise. And he was
Good
getting
point.
discouraged.
Good points, everyone. I just wanted to say real quick, hello, Aquachar. I'm doing a post hopefully tonight about the bags that you sent, and that will be part of the 3,000 subscriber giveaway too. We're going to include some Aquachar. Love that stuff. We can talk about that endlessly, but I wanted to say, hey, Sam and Chris, Carrie, and Sam, if you have a few minutes, I want to ask a few questions about BioBandage in the comments, but then we're trying to do a seahorse ID. So if you could stick around, please do, because I'm going to put up a picture and we're going to chat about what the person was sold, what it really is, and I'd love your eyes and your opinions. But really quick, guys, before we go to that,
yeah, the biggest thing we would need right now, Kelly, on that is just a positive ID.
Right, positive ID, right. But before we jump to that, wait. Before we jump to that, Ocean Rider recommends debride ointment for wounds. Has anyone ever tried it? It's for koi, and it's an alternative for BioBandage. Has anyone tried that? I have not.
Never even heard of it.
I know that Dan likes to put Allison,
Alamax.
Allison or Alamax on wounds, which he swears by. And I'll bring that up in next week's episode when I'm with him to talk a little bit more about that. But I don't think I've personally used it, but I don't think trying anything that's ointment and, not internal, I think I'm good with it. You know what I'm saying? I'm not real worried about it. Okay, you guys, before everybody does have to Sam, it doesn't matter. I can see your comments, so it doesn't matter. Before, not to jump around, but because I got the key players here right now, and Aquachar, thanks for coming. I would jump to talking about Aquachar right now, but I want to get this idea out of the way. Okay, I'm going to quit rambling, and I'm going to share my screen. Actually, Cheryl, let's lead up to the conversation. Why are we showing this picture? What happened? You were contacted to ID him because why?
Oh, are you talking to me?
Yes.
Yeah,
Why?
okay.
Yeah.
Well, basically, I'm not going to say a whole lot because this is potentially an investigation.
Oh.
Yeah. Basically, someone I know was told that this individual was selling tiger tails, hippocampus combs. He didn't think they looked at it, and he got a hold of both Alicia and myself, sent us each a picture, and it looks like a hippocampus hystrix.
Okay, so without going into more detail about anything, because we're not involved in any of that, but yeah, so we're just trying to decide what species this seahorse is.
Yeah,
so
it's hard because the picture is not very. It's a number of them basically in a tub. So
all right, let's see if I can do it.
But the long snout and the spines say hystrix.
All right, guys, so here's the image. We don't have a better one, but I'm just curious. I would absolutely say that looks like hystrix because the first two seahorses I ever bought when I had no idea what I was doing before I met any of you guys were hystrix. They were labeled hystrix. I just didn't know any better not to buy them, and they looked identical. I wish I had that picture with me. I'd pull it up. Yeah. But is the reason that they are being sold as tiger tail because I do notice the little rings. Not rings.
I don't have enough information yet to know exactly what's going on. But for somebody to claim that these were combs, they're definitely not tiger tails. And again, I don't know. I don't have enough information yet to be able to draw any real conclusions. But it doesn't. Something's amiss on this.
Right, and I'm telling you that, especially the one that's like sideways on the absolute right might be left on the video, but the one where you can really see its form, its profile, side profile, that really looks. Sam says hystrix too. Seahorse Corner says definitely.
On Messenger so I can copy it to my desktop and enlarge it?
Absolutely, I'll do it right now as we speak. How's that?
Yeah.
Let me see. Wait, if I do it, it'll take the picture.
I'm thinking they could be subs, they could be ankhs, they could be hystrix. I can't. The picture isn't good enough for me to. I have to start counting spines and the whole 9 yards.
I'm going with Hystrix for sure because I kept them. I mean, and I didn't keep
Yeah,
them
I've
long
never,
because they were wild caught. but
I've
but
never had them. So,
they look the way that the seahorse is holding its head in that like
mhm.
almost perfectly shaped parallel head to chest ratio and head down. That it absolutely reminds me of Hystrix and the spines for sure. And Sam took a screenshot and enlarged it and said that snout and the spine. Yep, absolutely. I think so too. Now, I mean, you is it actually I don't know if we should get into any more details or not, especially if it's something that's like seriously being looked at right now. But it's just a shame that folks sell seahorses as something else. You know, you want to say anything about that?
Happens all the time.
See, I never see it anymore. I never see any of these
Well,
exotic species for sale.
yeah, it's nowhere near as bad as it used to be several years ago when we still were getting the net pen raised seahorses distributed around the world. And you never knew what you were getting. They're not subs. No, they're not subs, Sam.
Right. And she's saying the
I just
head to
wanted to
body.
compare a picture put next to my Augustus.
Oh yeah. Well, I will send it to you to blow up, Ray, as soon as I take down the picture. I'm just letting anybody else chime in if Chris was here or whatever. Because I have never dealt with Augustus, so you might be right.
Yeah. The thing is, I was also thinking Augustus, but again, the snout length and stuff is just too much.
Yeah.
And that's what Sam said. Sam is my go-to, one of my go-tos for IDing Australian species. To me, since I haven't worked with them, they all look a lot alike.
Right. It's difficult. And you know what's really difficult is the fact that they keep coming out with more. And I mean, don't even get me started on like the CUDA complex and all that craziness where, you know, all these seahorses may or may not truly be separate species. And I mean, I think, you know, when they move into different areas, whether it be climate change or what, any reason, when they move, when they move into different areas, they adapt. And I think they might change a bit. You know what I mean? I mean, a species has genetic, this is what the species is, but their appearance can change, right?
Well, look at the northern and the southern erectus. They do not look like the same species, but DNA testing that has been done on them says that they are the same species, but they're morphologically, they look very dissimilar to me. Because I've
Right.
had both, so it's easy for me to, say, oh, no, that's the northern, no, that's the southern. And they interbreed readily. They have no problem with that. So it gets a little tricky sometimes.
Right. And Sam, as you see on the screen, said the new common names also like Southern Knights for potbellies, or, you know, ocean riders got many erectus named different things, which is fine. I get it. They're looking at color, but, you know, it gets confusing. Who is it that has the online manual? I'll try to link it when we're done. It's what's the conservation place's name? I can't think of it right now.
You mean the Seahorse ID?
Yeah, but
yeah. Okay.
I actually interviewed one of the ladies who wrote it, and I can't remember the name of the dang book. I feel terrible. I mean, it's the Seahorse ID, but what was the organization that the conservation organization that put it forward?
Yeah. I've got several of those saved on my computer.
Yeah, it's just killing me. Sam, do you remember what's their name? Oh my gosh. Oh, I can't believe I can't remember. Hang on, I'm about
Well,
to
the
look this
Southern
up.
Knights started out years ago. It was after David Warland, I believe, stopped working with the potbellies. But what was it? I forget the name. The company is no longer in business. They labeled them as Southern Knights, unless I'm mistaken.
Project Seahorse. Sorry.
Yeah.
Seahorse.
It's under a lot of different things, but it was originated with Project Seahorse.
Gotcha. Well, all I can say is anybody who's new to seahorses that watches this later, if you need an ID on a seahorse, check that ID book that I will link when we're done, or come here to Wine Wednesday and ask us. We'll put a picture up. because, and especially, you know what, I've gone to stores and seen just seahorse, not even the name at all, and if they don't know the species that they're selling, that might be a problem. So we don't have a lot of information about this situation. We're not condemning anybody or saying anything. We're just saying that's not. I think that's Hystrix. Chris Carey says Hystrix too.
My favorite pair of combs that I ever owned, and I had them for a number of years, were wild caught. I found them in a fish store, paid $30 a piece for them, and they were labeled black seahorses.
Mm-hmm.
I knew what I was looking at.
Right. Yep. It gets confusing, and I mean, unless you're a Chris Carey or a Graham Short, who actually knows. Okay, literally, let's count. Or Cheryl said, and Ray said, if the picture was more close up, then unless somebody's able to like count the dang spines and say the coronet has this many spikes or it's low or back or whatever. I mean, I really think this is Hystrix just because I happen to keep them. But I could be wrong too. And hello, Francis. Let's see. Okay, I'm gonna take the picture down. But hey, Francis said, just got off after sterilizing my seahorse tools. Nice. Good job. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing now. But then I'll bring myself back up here. But anyways, so yeah, I haven't seen it as much lately, but that's a darn shame. Because different species require different care. I mean, don't you all agree with that? I mean,
different temperatures,
the way they feed.
Oh yeah, the difference between an erectus and a combs to feed is like night and day.
Doesn't look like my Angustus. I just put it on Messenger. I put the picture there, or the link to the picture, if you want to look at it and compare it.
Cool. Okay. And Chris actually did say he doesn't think it's Angustus or what did he say? Where did he say it? He doesn't think it's Submagotus, Augustus, or Spinosomissus.
Leaning toward Hystrix.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, everybody is. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Chris, because I was just curious, but yeah. Darn shame, because I know the Hystrix were picky, at least the ones I had. This is many, many years ago, but they reminded me in characteristics, in personality of like a Barbori. However, you talk to Ray, and Ray doesn't think Barbori are picky, right?
Well, they're a little bit spinier looking than my Angustus.
Yeah. No, I meant
I have trouble with the Australian species because so many of them are so similar in so many ways. And I just don't have enough experience with them in person to be able to just look at a picture and say, oh, that's such and such. And I openly admit it.
But Ray, what I was saying is that from what I remember, it was many, many years ago. But when I came, actually, let me tell you my point first. My point is, again, like I was just saying, the reason that it's so important that these seahorses species are labeled properly and sold properly is because the personalities and needs of these seahorses are different. Different species act differently. And what I was saying is, when I kept Hystrix, Hippocampus hystrix, they remind me years later of Hippocampus barbori in behavior. Like they were pickier. But you don't think Barbori are picky, right? I mean, you think they're yay? I don't know. I had to target feed my Barbori and my Hystrix because they would not chase food. They would not eat it off the bottom. They acted like little prissy,
And
Anyways.
by the way, you were talking about using that Seahorse ID guide.
Yes.
Well, unless you've got, unless you've got a fair bit of experience, you're going to have a hell of a time because there's so much similarities from one to another. And for you to be able to count the various different spine sections, the dorsal fin, so on. Probably the closest anybody's going to come is being able to maybe sort out the coronet. But when it comes down to the rest, counting the rings can be
Right.
problematic. And
It can be, well,
for
it can
me,
get
them,
tricky.
it's all the same.
1, 2, 3. Oops, is that 4 or 5?
Right, exactly. I will
Yeah.
say too, though, that there, and I will link this, everything I talk about, I've started to actually follow through, guys. Check last week. I'm starting to link the things I promised to link. So when we're done, I will link. Also, there's a site also run by Project Seahorse where you can upload a picture and it will be ID'd by the specialist or something. Yeah.
To answer
I'll link
Francis's question, though,
Yes. Read it. Go ahead.
he says, "Oh yes, that's the question I had." To continue the thread, if we see suspected wild-caught imports, what should we do in terms of legislature with the current of no importing of wild-caught seahorses? The key is if they are brought in legally. One, coming out of Australia, they're going to be captive bred because Australia does not allow the export of any indigenous species on any kind of a large scale. So that right there would be a red flag. Secondly, if they did come in, they would have to be certified with a CITES permit. And I have gone round and round with some fish stores about, oh, you don't have a CITES permit? Where did they come from?
Mhm.
And I've worked with basically illegal importation and exportation of wildlife over the years. And there's a lot of people out there that are not going to be telling you the truth about where they came from. And you have to know ahead of time the questions to ask to get the appropriate information.
And you can't always blame the stores that sell them because
It's coming from the
for the
wholesalers.
most part, they're reading on their fish list and it says X type of seahorse. And here in Canada, we used to always get these fish lists out and it always said CUDA on it. But then when you got them in, it could have been CUDA and it could have been a couple different types there, but you also had red-eye coming in under the same label.
Right. Real quick question though, before I see your next question, I'll put it up. But real quick question: is the current law? CITES Appendix 2 confuses me. I mean, because there's just so many. What about this? What about that? So my question is it illegal to import wild-caught seahorses? I don't think it is. I think there's just rules.
You
Depends
have
on
to
the
have
country.
a CITES permit
Yeah.
Right.
to be able to import species, just like you have to have the CITES permit to be able to export them. It's on both the shipping and the receiving end. So it's not something that you can just say, oh, well, they had the CITES permit. No, you both have to go through the entire.
No. I
No, I don't
imported
think so.
mine from Australia and I
Yeah.
didn't have to have CITES. They provided the CITES for me.
And the problem, guys, anybody watching this that's like, why don't they know what they're talking about? It changes. The rules, they
Right.
change constantly. So
They're really cracking down. And one of the things Dan ran into is he was exporting some potbellies that he raised down into the Bahamas, I think it was. It took him over 8 months, had to completely keep redoing the paperwork. And then just like some other people have described, when the seahorses arrive in their new home, in their new country, then it's up to the government in that country to verify everything. And if they don't like what they see, hey, you can lose the entire shipment.
And that is that's the other shoe dropping, because while we do all want to protect wild caught seahorses in the ocean from being over collected, we do need a few to be collected. Like if I ever get the dang MACNA videos done, you'll hear Rochelle and Chris from Seahorse Australia talk about how they haven't collected new seahorses of a certain species since they started, because they're so good at propagating and captive breeding. But you do have to collect the new species. I don't know how to say it properly, but you need to collect new for genetics typically at some point. And we wouldn't have seahorses, period, if a few weren't collected. It's about sustainability. MACNA was all about that. But what I was going to say is we can no longer purchase from Seahorse Australia because they had so many problems with our Fish and Wildlife denying packages. In fact, what they do talk about in the Macna video, keep watching, it'll come up, I promise. I just keep editing. But when I do post it, you'll hear that they talked a lot about the fact that their last shipment, which you're talking thousands of dollars to come from Australia to the US,
they lost.
and seahorse lives, and they got confiscated just because the Fish and Wildlife thought that if the seahorse was not physically attached to the hitch that was in the bag, there was something wrong.
Yeah.
And that we all know that's not true. That's not true. But they don't educate the Fish and Wildlife. So if they're going to do regulations, which I agree with, they need to educate the people who are regulating. Okay, go ahead, Cheryl.
If you know David Warland, he and Tracy exported out of Australia the first captive bred pot bellies. And during that process, 9/11 hit. His shipment was turned around, sent back to another airport. And because of the circumstances at that time, with nobody knowing what was going on, basically all the seahorses were confiscated and he never got any back.
Yep. And usually they end up, they don't, we're not trying to say they kill the seahorses or anything, but they give them to like a public aquarium, which is great for the public aquarium, right? But it's just not right or fair to the people involved.
They let all that shipment arrive. 1 second, Francis.
Oh, go ahead.
The general consensus with Chris and other people is that they are hippocampus hystrix. Ideally, we need a clear picture of one of them to be able to do an absolute positive ID, but that is the general consensus.
Right. And just to kind of wrap up the shipping talk and CITES talk, the thing is that these rules are changing constantly. Everybody's not even aware of what all the rules are. And then you get into the point where Seahorse Source, for instance, didn't even try to export. Well, I shouldn't say that. I don't know for sure. I won't speak for them. But I'm just saying they had problems with the fact that they were actually trying to ship captive bred seahorses. And due to the rules, the CITES rules, they needed to know exactly where the seahorse was taken from the ocean. And they're saying they weren't taken from the ocean. These came from my living room or whatever, my store. And it didn't mesh, right? So I just think
Dan describes having to give them the same information multiple times, and they kept coming back and asking him the same questions before he could export anything.
Right.
And actually, it may have been his Tanios, not pots, what I think.
My erectus, though, I imported from Seahorse Corral in Florida, and it came through just no problem at all, and in no time at all.
It just a lot of it depends.
It's Canada.
On who you get this inspector.
Who the person is that's doing the inspecting. I think.
Right.
It depends on who you get, just like the post office stuff.
Well, exactly. But yeah, no, I agree completely.
Don't say that when I'm taking a sip. It's all time.
But the thing that bugs me the most is their resolution. Like, okay, oops, the seahorses weren't attached to the hitch in the bag, which anyone with logic that knows seahorses knows that doesn't matter at all. But since they thought that's the way they read the law or the rules. What doesn't make sense to me is that they go give them to a public aquarium. Because I just don't understand that part of it. If there's something wrong with the shipment, why wouldn't you either contact the parties and figure it out? Or, I don't know. I wouldn't want them to die or anything, but that seems like government, let me put on my tinfoil hat. That's conspiracy. Okay. Anyways, all I'm saying is
maybe the public aquarium had a way to pay under the table and get free seahorses.
Yeah.
Bleep, we're bleeping that out. Ray's gonna get kicked off YouTube. No, seriously though, I agree with I agree with the people trying to save the seahorses in the ocean. There's a sustainable way to collect them. That's how it needs to be done, where we don't mess with the populations, but we are able to, it can be done both ways. And I just, my big point is I agree with regulations. We just got to educate the regulators. But moving right on along past that one before we start really talking conspiracy. And Chris said, let's see. Wild-caught seahorses can come from Australia, but only from Western Australia. There are only a handful of collectors who have permits to collect them legally in that state. Yeah, right, exactly. And I mean, I get it. I really do get it. And I love that it's a permit system, so not just anybody can go out and get them. Whereas in Florida, my goodness, you can go out and scoop them up. But anyways, I really don't know what else to say about it. The MACNA video really dealt, we talked about it in depth. So I just need to get it posted, guys, and then you can watch that and give your comments on that. But yeah, it just sucks.
Well,
Hey, Chip.
It's like, why has why is Hawaii banning the exportation of so many indigenous species? Well, my brother lives there and has for over 15 years. And he lives on the west side of Maui. And he describes them, of course, using the cyanide, what they call the fish getters. There's guns that they shoot out and grabs the fish.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of it is not only very inhumane, but it's also depleting the wild populations indigenous to the area.
Mm-hmm.
And so CITES is not necessarily always a bad thing.
Right.
And it's one of those things where all too often we do not have enough knowledge when a species starts becoming critically endangered to be able to save that species.
True, but there's also questions about how endangered they really are. Like, nice.
Dots, when after the BP oil spill and the dwarf seahorses, were put on basically an endangered list, and you can no longer keep them or harvest them or anything else. And they were saying it's because the BP oil spill was destroyed their habitat. In reality, based on information from others, that divers and people like that, yeah, they lost some, the Louisiana coast, particularly some in the eastern Texas coast, but they all of a sudden had massive populations in the Panhandle area and down farther south. So they weren't critically endangered, but it was a knee-jerk reaction, and in this case, it wasn't necessary.
Hey, real quick, total change of subject, but I should every week credit the images that I use, and I always forget. I'm sorry. But Sam Banfield, who is giving us wonderful comments, this I'm pointing, and you guys can't see my pointer, but the red seahorse in the lower, it's my right, might be your left, not sure, but that beautiful red seahorse was Sam's. So just wanted to credit that. The yellow seahorse right above him was Lucy Arowanas. Let's see, the abdominalis, I believe, I can't remember. I think that was Seahorse Australia. I know that the sea dragon was from Seahorse Australia's images that they shared with me. So definitely, I always forget to credit, sorry, but that's Sam's beautiful red. And then Chris Carey from Seahorse Australia is the one who said we need snails and shrimp. So that's why we've got the little shrimpies. Those are just free images. But anyways, okay, Chris said I've had, or Sam talked about them being protected species. Some states, and she's in Australia also, some states you can dive to stock your own aquarium, but not protected species. Chris talks about having a few issues with CITES implementation, but bring them up when I work through some things in the new year. Absolutely. Sorry, I totally spilled out that. Sorry, I'm trying to read comments at the same time. But yeah, we could talk about CITES and regulations and wild caught and captive bred for every episode forever. I just think it's an ever changing topic, and I just think there's so many. You could even get into the fact that people are being put out of jobs in very poor countries because they can't sell seahorses. There's just so many sides to this, and as I was saying earlier, I was writing an article about seahorse trade, and I actually interviewed a guy in Spain, a guy in all over the place. These researchers and people that work like for Project Seahorse, and even the one question that nobody could ever answer is like, they have a detailed way that they decide that a species is endangered, but they're looking at a specific little portion of the ocean. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's so hard to say. Some people will say erect. If you go on the red list right now, IUCN, I always do it wrong, IUNC, something like that. Red list. It literally says that certain species are endangered. And we're like, what? I mean, seriously, like erectus aren't endangered. They're all over Florida. They're everywhere. And even I'm not trying to say anything on either side of this, because I have so much respect for like Dr. David Haraski. He let me use his images on my website too. So love him. But he works with HYDI in building seahorse hotels, like these man-made structures for seahorses to hitch on and bring the seahorses back to the area and repopulate, which is amazing. But then, if you ask Seahorse Australia, HYDI or not, I mean, they're being sold by CHI. So it's just very confusing. We're not making a stance either way, just saying, like, I'm going back to my main point. Let's educate the regulators, period. If they know what they're doing, they should have some sort of training so that we don't get any problems in shipping. I'm leaving it there before I get myself in trouble.
Well,
hey, everybody, and did you see my beautiful little teeny Christmas tree with seahorse ornament? Just wanted to point it out. Go ahead, Cheryl.
I was going to say, when I was working with parrots years ago, there were several problems. One, they used to have massive quarantine stations, and the parrots had to go through a particular length of time before they could be cleared of psittacosis. Then they were allowed to go out and be sold. And they found that it was much more cost effective to have all the bands of the inexpensive species and then put those bands on very expensive birds and sell them as having been brought through quarantine. So there was definitely a lot of legal problems going on. And I suspect some of this is actually probably occurring in the fish industry as well, in corals.
Well, sure. I mean, think about the Hawaii stuff. And I mean, I'm very worried about our industry, seriously. Like, and I'm honestly, to be honest with you guys, I'm shocked to see Hystrix in a picture in, someone's selling or buying them, because I don't know if I'm just not internet savvy anymore or what, but I never see different species. Like, it seems like people ask me all the time, where can I buy barbari? And I'm like, I don't know. Ever since Seahorse Source stopped, going, there's not many other people that are selling multiple species. You know what I mean?
Well, Alicia's working on it.
Yes, of course.
Ocean Rider has limited access, of course, being in Hawaii. And I'm not sure. I know that their export restrictions are very strict. I don't know what their import restrictions are in Hawaii, which can also have an impact on somebody like Ocean Rider trying to breed seahorses in that environment.
I'm glad you said that, though, Cheryl, because you're right. Ocean Rider does have barbori. They do. They don't look the same as the barbori I bought from Seahorse Source, but they do have them. And do you know, Cheryl, because I know you're intimately involved with them, do you know if some of the species that are not in stock right now will be coming back? Or
my understanding from talking with Carol is they are working on it. The biggest, it's just like some species are easy to breed. Some species are like, yeah, I'll dance with everybody out here.
Yep.
That's Cuda. Redi are like, yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there. And Erectus are proven very easy to work with. And they're just a fairly large, very social species.
Sure.
And a lot of the other species they're just, every one of them is different. And I think a lot of it too, in the last 17 years, we've really improved our nutrition for the seahorses.
Oh, yeah.
I still think we have a lot more room, a lot to go. And
Well, sure. Go ahead. Sorry.
well, one of my next experiments is I'm sure I'm going to have some new Erectus babies here fairly soon. And I already talked with Chad Clayton about it, that I want to try feeding them as their first food for the first couple of weeks, exclusively small copepods, rather than going with the brine shrimp.
I can't wait till you do that experiment and let us know how it goes. It's going to
Well,
be great.
I mean, I can do brine shrimp. I can get an 80+ survival rate out of a brood of Erectus, but that's not what I want. I want to see the growth rate.
Mhm.
And they should have an accelerated growth rate. I was reading a scientific article a few weeks ago that did an experiment with the sort of thing where they fed brine shrimp versus pods and stuff, and they found a huge difference not only in the growth rate but the survival of the fry. And that was done on an Erectus. So I'm real curious as to see if I can get the same results, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will get Chad back on Two Wine Wednesday in the upcoming weeks. It's just been stressful trying to, because I'm doing this
Yeah.
vacation.
But Chad told me, he goes, it'll make a huge difference. I said, that was my thought.
And it actually, that'll be really cool if you're able to test it out before we get him on here. If you're able to test it out and then he comes on the show, then you'll be able to, back up whatever he's saying. And I just wanted to say real quick, guys, don't forget that I'll be posting either tonight or tomorrow an Ask Seahorse Source post on the Facebook page. And that will be because I will be with Dan on the 22nd, and Dan of Seahorse Source, sorry. And so I'm going to ask him all sorts of questions to get you guys all sorts of answers. So he's dealt with all these species. And what I was going to say too about what you were saying about Erectus and stuff, I still recommend, like I sit here and I say, oh, I wish more people had more species. But I've been doing this for a really long time. Any newcomer, I definitely recommend Erectus. Not only, as Cheryl said, do they breed easier if that's what you're interested in, but they're just, in my opinion, much easier to care for than some of these other species. Chris and Ray might have a different opinion because they can't get Erectus where they are. So they have their easiest or whatnot, but in the US, Erectus all the way for seahorses.
Potbellies are probably one of the easiest seahorses to raise because they're big. They produce great big fry that are benthic. They grow like little weeds. Injuns who are about the same size as adults are completely the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not going to be just size or where they come from, but the habitats that they're indigenous to and how they've evolved over time.
Yep, and we talked on a previous episode about how even if they're captive bred, they still have things literally bred into them that came from where they lived, the way they react, the way they are. It still matters where they came from, even if they are captive bred. You all should be buying captive bred.
Some of my young Erectus that I've gotten recently, the biggest surprise in my life is when the ding-dongs started hunting in rocks, because I'm used to seeing combs doing this constantly. Mm-hmm. The Erectus are like, no, I'll hang out here and wait for the food to fly by. Mm-hmm. But these seahorses are very active. They're always starving. And it's not that I don't feed them. I feed them every 4 hours.
I know. Erectus would eat any food out of your hand. They'd snatch it from you if they could.
They see me coming and they go, zoom. Well, here we are. Feed me.
Oh, but that's my favorite part of Erectus. That's what I was saying earlier with my Borbori. They were gorgeous seahorses. I mean, they were my favorite species, but I had to target feed them. And they, when they got frisky and started dancing with each other, they were active. But other than that, they really just weren't that active. Whereas Erectus, they're always moving, and they're like, you walk up to the tank, like Cheryl said, and there's zoom, where's the food? Zoom. I've got so many videos of this. And even within the species, like Holly's seahorses are hunters. They love to get down and under the cracks, and so it just depends on the seahorse. But
they have great personalities. They're little individuals, all of them.
Part of it's individual, but it's like Draco Marine years ago. I got some seahorses from them. And they were talking about how they had several hundred gallon tanks of CUDA. And they would never actually reproduce. They'd dance their fool heads off with everybody, males to males, females to females, females and males,
Yep.
but they could never get them to reproduce.
Mm.
And somewhere along the lines, they were missing something in the habitat that would generate that. And of course, my first thought was overcrowding. But to this day, CUDA are not an easy seahorse to get to breed.
Interesting. That's so interesting. And yeah, you guys, I spoke about this last time. I thought my male was pregnant. 3-4 weeks went by. All of a sudden, he's dancing again, opening his pouch, inflating his pouch. Now he looks pregnant again, of course, when I go on vacation. So I'm probably going to lose the first batch. Boo. We are going to make this a shorter Wine Wednesday because it was just open chat. But again, next week I will literally be with Dan or have just been with Dan. So make sure to watch for the post. Ask Seahorse Source, Ask Dan, and get your questions in so that I can ask them. And I did want to say also, even when we have an episode where the conversation is open chat and it goes towards, more like CITES related or breeding or something that a new seahorse keeper is like, oh my gosh, I don't even know what they're talking about. You can always ask questions. We love questions. We will completely reverse and change the topic and start talking about what to put in a seahorse tank. It's totally cool. Just, join us, and we just love to talk seahorses. My significant other always says he makes sure he's not here for Wine Wednesday because he was like, I don't want to hear you crazies talk about a bunch of seahorses and drink wine. But hey, we have fun. And Chris Carey, yes, Wine Wednesday next week. It'll just be in Florida and possibly with Dan.
Yeah. Sam, CUDA, there's a reason why we call them the CUDA complex, because you really never know for sure what species you're going to get. Subs, we know what they look like. And I think part of it is that some people may have been mixing different species of CUDA together and trying to get them to reproduce.
I missed that question. What was the? What was the question about the CUDA?
Well, Sam posted. I thought hippocampus CUDA were easy.
Oh, we're hard.
Subs are much harder than. And Chris said it too. Subs are much harder. It's a species thing.
And I would just say thank you, truly thank you to Seahorse Source, to Seahorse Savvy, to Seahorse Australia, to Sam, to Holly, to Cheryl, to everybody who is breeding these seahorses, because it is not easy. And, that's the way we have seahorses for the industry and hobby, is because of you guys. So thank you. We appreciate you. We need to get Seahorse Australia seahorses back here. But in the meantime, I just thank you all for doing what you do and doing that hard work. That is not easy or cheap.
I still want a pair of hippocampus zebra before I die.
Somebody get this woman some hippocampus zebra. Yeah, I would love it. I'm the type that when there's a new species on the market, like I'm not to the level that the rest of these guys are. So I would not try to condition wild caught, because when a true, okay, let me back up and say anybody can breed their captive bred seahorses and have a rectus and sell them to their stores, and that's wonderful. I mean, that helps the industry and the population of captive bred go round. But the commercial breeders that are taking these wild caught species and conditioning them, you have no idea how much work goes into that. I mean, not only treating them for anything that came from the ocean, but then getting them to eat frozen, getting them to breed. I mean, it's incredible what these guys are doing. And I just hats off to all of you and thank you for doing it. And she wants zebra before she dies. I'm thinking, I want to see, no, never mind. I was thinking of the little teeny guys.
Kelly, it's like my wild caught pair of combs that I ended up got so many years ago. And I already knew that they were carriers or Euronema. So I had to treat them for Euronema. I had to do the 9-week deworming. They were wild caught. They were emaciated. So I really didn't think they were going to survive. And spent over $300 buying the mysid shrimp. And after 6 months, I stopped jumping out of bed before dawn every morning and running in to look at the tank to see if they were still swimming.
Right. Yep.
And they lived with me for almost 8 years, and they were large adults when I got them.
Wow.
But that was one of those things where it took a toll on me, both financially and emotionally, because I was so sure that I was going to lose them. And they went on and produced lots of neat fry and some fry that actually started hitching within the first few days after birth. But that's the exception oftentimes rather than the rule in that situation.
Absolutely. And Chris said, come over with a bunch of money, Cheryl, and we'll find you some zebras. But that's another thing. Like, I don't have any idea who got the zebras that were collected.
Yeah.
Marina shared a bit about her knowledge, but we don't know what happened to them. But the fact is you don't see them on the market. So that really upsets me too. We were talking about regulations earlier. It really upsets me that a really cool species that is not endangered but is collected goes to the highest bidder instead of someone who could actually get them to produce.
The thing is with zebra too is they're deeper water species, which makes them much harder to bring up and keep going and acclimate.
Sure, no, I get all of that, but I'm saying the fact that 4 or 6 or I can't even remember how many were sold into the market, and
Chris Carey just said, "I do. You'll never see them."
I know, but that's what upsets me, because if they had gone to someone like Chris or even Cheryl, or someone who knew what they were doing and knew how to propagate them, how to make captive bred specimens come from them, we'd see them in the market. They would figure it out. I understand they're deep water. They might have different eating habits. They might have, but these experts, or I shouldn't say experts, these very experienced breeders could figure it out. But instead it goes to someone who just has a lot of money. And that I don't like that. But anyways, go ahead with I have one more question for Holly, and my kids are bugging me, so I'm going to have to cut it short tonight. But were you going to say something else, Cheryl? Oh, okay. All right.
I said too much.
No, yeah, I know. We always say too much. I'm probably going to get a ding from YouTube for all the things conspiracy. Anyways, but no.
Seahorse conspiracy theories.
Yep, exactly. But much respect to everybody. We love all of you. I don't care what side you're on. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, so glad to see Sam here tonight. And I just got to keep repeating myself. Next week I'll be with Dan, hopefully live. If not, I'll just have been with him. So definitely give me any questions, even if they're not actually your questions, if you just think they're good questions, because I want to make sure we get a good episode next week. But Holly, my last question for you was just to kind of touch base and backtrack. How's the freshwater tank going?
Chris
that tank is doing fine. Yeah, I haven't lost any fish. I haven't added any more fish. I'd like to get some more plants. I'd like to get, a couple more fish. I have one poor Harlequin Rosabora that's been all alone for weeks because I lost the other ones to ick, and they're schooling fish. But that one is doing fine, but I want to be able to quarantine anybody before I add them to the tank. So I have to wait for Thing 2's hospital tank to come down so I have room for another tank.
Gotcha.
So I'm kind of holding off for a bit, but everybody in there is doing fine. I haven't had an overpopulation of snails yet.
Okay.
I figured out the Cory catfish eat them.
Oh, cool.
And they don't eat a lot. It's not their main food apparently, but they must be snacking on them because they haven't overtaken the tank. Sometimes I'll see more, sometimes I'll see less. I saw a ram's horn snail in there for the first time the other day, and that one's big. Nobody's going to eat him, so I kind of have to watch and see what it does.
Yep.
But that
Eh,
tank,
well, you know what? And you know what? The thing is, the fact that that you're taking your time and taking longer, I think that's actually smart. I know your reasoning is just because you need the room. Thing two has to get better and go back home before you can set up a quarantine. And I think that's smart too. But I just think when people have a problem and then they rush to fix it and rush to restock, it usually ends in disaster. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm,
It's
mhm,
better to take your time, make sure everything's better, like you're doing with thing two. Make
mhm,
sure he's really better before you stop medication or put him back.
mhm,
But
mhm.
very glad to hear, and no more sign of ick anywhere.
No, uh-uh.
Awesome.
No, I treated
Oh, yeah.
7 days and then I just stopped because I'm like, well, if I see it again, I guess I'll just throw in another tablet. It was easy to use.
Yep. Well,
So,
that's why I keep asking, is because long term, if it long term works, man, we need to know. We need to talk about that. But
mhm.
congrats on thing two. Congrats on the freshwater tank. And Chris Carey is going to get the last question, guys, because they're bugging the crap out of me, the kids. Unfortunately, H zebra, H montebellionensis, I can't do the names, aren't what you think they are. Not sure they have a place in the hobby or trade. That's a really good topic,
Yeah.
Chris, that we need to discuss at length in another episode, because there are some species like the I can't think of the name now, the little teeny tiny suckers.
The thing is,
We wouldn't be able to care for them.
17 years ago, we said that it would be impossible to raise sea dragons,
That's
Lepia
true.
or Weedy, and now we're able to do it. But it takes a lot of dedication and research and a lot of trial and error and heartbreak to raise some of these species. I think eventually it will probably happen, Chris. Probably not in my lifetime.
Oh, well, I'm still hoping you get a pair, just you. But no, I mean, I think there's valid points on either side of it, because that's absolutely true. Everybody said we wouldn't be able to keep seahorses, period. That's something that Rochelle proved everybody wrong back in the day. So, I don't know the answer. I do think there are some species that don't belong in the hobby. I do agree with that. What did you say they are, Holly? I always forget the names. The little guys.
Pygmies.
Pygmies. Thank you.
Mhm.
Couldn't think of it. I
There's a
kept thinking
bunch of
pinto.
different kinds of them. They keep finding new ones all the
Yep.
time. They're so
Yeah.
tiny.
Yeah,
They're
that's
so
because
tiny. No wonder they didn't know about them.
that's because of the size of a grain of rice,
Hmm.
and nobody was looking for anything that small to be living successfully in the big blue.
And they
Yep.
look like where they live. They look like a part of the thing they're
yeah.
hanging on to. So nobody would have thought.
I mean, I would
Probably
love to have
great.
polka dotted seahorses. I would love that. But actually, we on a very previous episode, we've talked about to multiple different people about how difficult they are to keep. So they don't belong in the hobby. I don't think. I mean, caring for the plant that they live on is even harder than caring for them. So.
Okay.
Totally agree. That's an episode we got to talk about at length. But what, Cheryl? Go ahead.
Imagine yourself being the size of your big toe, and the only thing you can do is hang on to one branch, and then you have to find a way to feed yourself and find a mate.
Yep. Well, I know when we had Richard Ross on, and he's one of the gentlemen one of the biologists that actually did work with pygmies, and he talked about because I couldn't believe, how do they let go and breed? I don't understand. So, well, go back and watch that episode. My kids are literally dancing behind the light because they need me to go.
Bring them on screen and let us wish them a Merry Christmas.
Come say hello, and then they'll let us go. Tanya, Tori, come on.
Hi, guys.
Come over
Hi,
here.
the girls. Where's the other one?
She's being shy. Just comes here. Okay, she's not coming. She's being shy.
Hi.
But
Merry
this
Christmas
is my
to you.
Merry Christmas.
mini
Happy
me.
holiday.
Say Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Okay.
You're welcome and thank you. This is your younger one?
They're twins. Yeah. The other
Which one was
twin won't
born
come
first?
on. Huh? The
Which one?
other one.
Oh, so you're the younger one. Yeah, okay.
She doesn't like it very much. But anyways, okay. So guys, I am gonna have to call it for tonight. Thank you so much for coming and chatting with us. But we will be back next week. Don't forget to post your questions on my post, Ask Seahorse Source. And Merry Christmas, Jim.
Did you just see the last?
What?
Happy Holidays, Whisperers.
Yes,
Merry
absolutely.
Christmas, young whisperers.
Merry Christmas,
Merry Christmas, young
Whisperers.
Whisperers. That was it.
Love it. Bye, Sam. Bye, everybody. Okay, I'm cutting it before we get into another topic. Oh, Ton, you can't touch wine. You're underage. Go away. All right. She wanted to do the cheers. I will do the cheers. We're not doing anything illegal on the YouTube. But thank you, Cheryl and Holly, for coming, and everybody in the conversation that chatted. If you have ideas that you want to be discussed as topics, comment, message. We're here for you guys. And if nobody asks questions, we just sit around and chat like this. So any speakers you want, let us know. But okay.
I want to know
Everybody
when
say
Dan
goodbye.
is going to set up his seahorse operation again.
Right? Okay, I'll ask him. That's the number one question.
I already know the answer.
Everybody have a fabulous, well, I'll talk to you before Christmas, but still have a fabulous holiday season. You guys say bye. I'm going to have to go. Sorry.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Cheers with me, Holly.
Cheers.
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 Oh, you can cheers.